I've been looking at the pharmaceutical industry over the last 5 years or more, and I've been particularly studying breakthrough innovation. For this particular paper, I'm looking at the difference between market success and scientific success, and suggesting that they are different types of outcomes. Those that study the pharmaceutical industry, we know that this industry spends a lot of money to come up with a breakthrough innovation. They spend upwards of almost $1 million to $1 billion, and they can take 10 to 15 years to create an innovation. At the same time that this is occurring, we know that the number of breakthroughs in this industry has decreased, and we know that the number of patents associated with breakthroughs are declining as well. So firms are very nervous that they are going to be losing a lot of market share. This is an important industry to study, I feel. So in this particular study, we try to understand how firms use different external knowledge sourcing strategies to try to create what we consider to be market success and scientific success. But we suggest that they are two different types of success. In terms of market success, we find that firms are really interested in creating what we call efficacy supplements, in which that they create an extension to an innovation that already exists. They find a new population that they can find a new way to deliver that drug. So they have spent all this money and they want to find a way to continue it. So we call that a level of market success. Scientific success, however, is what we call new molecular entities, and they often can be more associated with high levels of social welfare. So they might not necessarily coincide with having an innovation that leads to more and more levels of market success. So we can find that there are two different outcomes. So let me give you an example. Okay. The first example that I think is relevant is Plumpy Nut. This was invented in 1997 and was commercialized in 2000. It was a really exciting product. It was a peanut-based product, and it helped children with malnutrition. And you didn't have to store it in a particular place. You didn't have to add any water to it. You didn't have to do anything. And they found that it drastically increased the life and death of children, and up to 90%. So we would say that this is a high level of market success. But interestingly, however, the firm that created this, they had a patent, and they wanted to vehemently defend this new innovation that they created. But interestingly, only 2 people have cited this. Okay? So those of us who look at innovation, and I've been studying innovation for a while, when you look at a particular patent, and if it's not highly cited, you would say that it's not very innovative. But indeed, it was innovative in terms of market success. The scientific success, it was not. So let's take a look at our overall model. We wanted to look at different firm knowledge strategies. We wanted to look at internal knowledge sourcing strategies, which is the firm's internal R&D. And we wanted to look at the importance of external knowledge sourcing, because we know that firms can't do everything at home. We know that they need to acquire knowledge from abroad, and they need to recombine it internally. And they have different modes in which they do that. So they can do that through alliances, licensing, mergers and acquisitions, and joint ventures, and they have a lot of different options available. And we wanted to understand how this affected new innovations, and particularly were they different for scientific success and market success. Okay. As I've just noted, scientific success and market success are very different from one another. So you can have a scientific success that that may or may not lead to market success. So let's take a look at the data. I collected data from 1992 through 2008, and I looked at approximately 36 new drugs. And I looked at various types of drugs, generic drugs, branded drugs. And I looked at all the patents that were related to those particular drugs. This is a really long, extensive process for those of you who may not know this industry very well. Then from those patents, I gathered information on how firms source knowledge. In addition to that, I looked at each particular drug, and I looked at the number of mergers and acquisitions that occurred during the life of that drug. I also looked at whether the firm used licensing, whether the firm used joint venture, and so forth, to kind of create these distinct types of knowledge sourcing strategies. So I'll give you just a kind of a look to see whether or not the market success and scientific success are different. I created a level of scientific success from 0 to 4, 4 being the highest level of scientific success. So we would consider this to be the highest level of breakthrough. And then I created a measure for market success, being 0, meaning that the drug came to the market and that the firm never found a way to use it again in its lifetime. So it would be 0 all the way through 41. 41 was the max at which firms were able to, in this particular study, find different extensions for an existing drug. So we can just kind of take a look at this data just a little bit. We find that in some cases, 0, which is scientific success, was really what we would call generics. They didn't find many reiterations of the drug, so they didn't do that very much. What we find in this particular study is that that firms that had lower levels of scientific success, they were also able to sometimes firms that had lower levels of scientific success, they had higher levels of market success. So they weren't necessarily higher levels of scientific success, did not necessarily mean that they were going to have market success, and vice versa. So what were the overall results? We found that they were distinctly different from one another. And we found that with regard to joint ventures, for our firm specifically, led to the highest levels of scientific success. So scientific success means that the drug led to what we call a level 4. So it was the highest level of scientific success. So the firms that engaged in joint ventures had the highest levels of scientific success. Firms that had the highest levels of market success, which I had in the previous chart, which had the highest level of market success, meaning they could have multiple reiterations of a particular drug, leading to 41 being the highest, that when they engaged in mergers and acquisitions, that led to more and more market success. So I think that it's interesting to find that the two are different from one another, and I think it's also interesting in this study to look at, thank you. I think it's interesting to find that there are two different. So what I'm hoping to do in this study is branch out my breakthrough innovation studies and look at two different types, market and scientific, and look at how firms are utilizing external knowledge sourcing to facilitate this process.